So now you know the supply chain, you know what demand response is, it's worthwhile having a look at how it works in action. So imagine a scenario where we're planning some maintenance in Auckland. In order to perform maintenance, we need to understand what demand is going to be doing the day of that maintenance. So, you know, a couple of days out we can tell generally what demand is going to be doing. And in order to perform maintenance, we know the demand needs to be below that line. And so we've picked the hard time. We've gone for the evening peak, just to make it fun. So it turns out that if we want to perform maintenance during the evening, we need to drop approximately 20 megawatts off that forecast peak for a period of time. So this is how we do it. We've got a portfolio of curtailment service providers registered with us. Each of them knows what they've promised to deliver ahead of time. However, across all of those curtailment service providers, you know, there's probably more than the 20 megawatts that we need. It's probably, you know, let's say there's 100 megawatts. We don't want 100 megawatts. We only need 20. So we make a selection based on a bunch of criteria like location, like price, like availability. There are a bunch of criteria which we can talk about later. So we've made a selection. These 4 curtailment service providers have been selected for this particular event. So we make a call. Each of them knows what they've promised to deliver, and they deliver during the event. So we've got, you know, 10, 2, 5, 3 megawatts that each of them are going to be delivering. At the end of the event, they all send back the metadata, electricity metadata from the individual locations that they are using to provide their demand response. We measure and verify their response based on the metadata that they send us. And we run a trace, and we calculate who delivered what, and if people delivered what they promised they were going to deliver, we're happy. And when we're happy, everybody's happy because they get paid their delivery payment. So in very simple terms, that's how demand response events work. You've got a need identified, a signal sent to consumers at least 2.5 hours in advance, response is given by CSPs, metadata is sent back, measurement and verification processes are run by us, and then consumers are paid, or the CSPs are paid. Right, so the next thing, and I mentioned it before, the big thing about demand response is that consumers need to understand what it takes to participate, because without consumers, it's not going to work. So I'll reintroduce to some of you Kate and Dave, and introduce some of you for the first time to Kate and Dave. So Kate and Dave are hotel owners in Auckland. They know that their hotels are fairly new, they're fairly capable, and they've heard that demand response is something that they could get a little bit of value out of. So they want to find out more. So if they want to participate in Transpower demand response, there are a bunch of requirements that need to be fulfilled. So there are a bunch of boxes that need to be ticked. So we'll step through some of those now. So the first is always going to be location. It's very rare that we're going to be calling a nationwide demand response event. We're going to be using it to target hotspots on the grid. So in this case, it's Auckland. Are you in Auckland? Yes, we are. We can tick that box. So I mentioned before, we're going to make demand response event calls at least 2.5 hours in advance of our need. So people are going to have at least 2.5 hours advance notice to prepare. So even though it's 2.5 hours notice, Kate and Dave as hotel owners don't want to be running around individual rooms, flicking off lights, turning down thermostats. The building management system is probably key for them to stay involved in demand response. Not essential, but it's probably a good idea. So do you have a building management system to help you automate? In this case, they know, yep, sweet, we've got new hotels, we're in, we can do this. So a typical demand response event will be 2 to 3 hours. And if you're going to promise to deliver us whenever we call you, you need to be able to respond for at least that period of time. So Kate and Dave both know that if we dim the lights, reduce heating and cooling for a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours, it's not going to impact too much on guest comfort levels. They're in. Are you available in winter? Well, I was there in Auckland yesterday and it was 20-something degrees and it's nearly winter. There's no such thing there. Summertime, it's always summer in Auckland apparently. So they're in. Right, the next big thing is that one of the characteristics, I guess, of demand response is that consumers receive financial benefit. So they receive a payment. And in order to pay, we need to be able to measure their response. So at every single location that's participating, we're going to need to have a time of use meter or a half-hourly capable electricity meter. So that's the first thing. You need the meter. Then the other big thing is you need to be able to get access to your electricity meter data in a timely manner. When I say timely, it's within 30 days. You need to provide that back to us. And you need to be able to send it back to us over the internet. So you're going to need a time of use meter, access to the meter data, and an internet connection. And this is where we'll get a bit of divergence. We'll get the Kates of the world who have a stream meter with Clarity, and they're actively managing their energy account. Every day they're getting, real time, some of them have access to their meter data. It'll be no problem for them. But I suspect we'll get a lot more Daves, and we are seeing a lot more Daves out there who have a monthly electricity bill, and that's probably the closest they get to their electricity meter. So when we press the button, it's not always going to be at 6 o'clock in the evening or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning or midnight. So if you're promising to deliver to us, you need to be available whenever we call you. And again, we'll get people like Kate who say, yep, 24/7 staffing, no worries, but we're automated, so there won't be any problems. We're in. We get a lot more Daves out there. Again, we're seeing a lot more Daves through our beta testing who don't understand yet what it means to their business to be able to respond at any time. So we'll have a few questions. So when you line them up side by side, there'll be a few Kates out there who are onto it, they're active, they're into it, they don't have any questions. But we'll see a lot more Daves out there who can tick most of the boxes but have a few questions. So the next step is to understand, what do I need to do to set myself up in order to participate? Once an agreement has been signed, all of our communication is via our demand response management system over the internet. There's no telephone calls, there's no text messages, there's no facsimiles. Everything is via our demand response management system. So the first thing a CSP needs to do is register themselves and all of the locations that they're using into our DRMS. Then it's useful to have staff handy who know what's going on. And then for Kate and Dave, as hotel owners, they're going to need to program their building management system to take a signal and respond. So that'll be, for them it'll be dimming the lights or reducing their heating and cooling. And then they need to prove that they can get their electricity meter data and send it back to us. And then anybody registering with us as a curtailment service provider in one of our programs will need to prove end to end that they can take a signal, respond, get meter data, send it back. So for Kate and Dave, that's our blueprint. As a hotel owner, this is what you need to do if you want to participate. So somebody like Kate, it'd be easy for Kate. It'd be a little bit of work, a little bit of cost, but she'll toddle off and set herself up as a CSP. So she's now in. And somebody like Dave, based on his questions, is probably, the response is predictable. It's going to be a little bit too hard and he's not going to be happy. But we want to encourage the Daves out there because they offer a huge capability to us. All right, so we want to make sure they're involved in some way. So how do we do it? This is where our third-party curtailment service provider comes in. So the models vary on how these guys engage Dave, but they contract directly to Transpower and then they'll go out and talk to the Daves of the world. So if there's no electricity meter or half-hour meter available, they'll plonk one on, and often it's at the CSP's cost. If the building management system needs programming, they'll do it for them, or they'll plonk their own box on the side. So they'll set it up for Dave. Now Dave's in. Hasn't had to do a lot of work, but he's in the game because of this third-party curtailment service provider. So the next step is to understand, I guess, the different financial outcomes for the different setups. So we've got Kate who's directly connected as a CSP and Dave who's going through a third-party CSP. So let's have a look at this availability payment. So we're paying some consumers to be there. Kate, she's a curtailment service provider. She gets paid her monthly, quarterly, whatever it is. She gets paid the availability payment. Same with Dave, CSP. But because he's outsourced the delivery, he'll hold on to a management fee, I guess, and pass a portion on to Dave and the other consumers that they're using. And when we make a call, people deliver, they get paid. So Kate's a CSP, she gets paid, she holds on to that. Same with Dave's CSP, he'll hold on to a portion and pass on whatever their commercial agreement says to each of the providers that they're using. And another scenario might be, let's say rather than a 20 megawatt call like we had in Auckland, it's a 10 megawatt call now. So we don't need as much. So we'll make the call, Kate responds, she gets paid, Dave's CSP responds, but because it's only a 10 megawatt call this time, Dave isn't included in this call. So he doesn't receive any payment, the others do. He didn't know about the event anyway, doesn't know, doesn't care. So when you line them up side by side, there are differences. Okay, so somebody like Kate who's put in a bit of time, a bit of effort, a little bit of cost, she receives full financial benefit. And somebody like Dave who has to do not a lot apart from agreeing to make his hotel available, he still receives financial benefit and he's happy because he hasn't had to do a heck of a lot and there's been very little cost on his part. So he's happy.